All right, everyone. I think it's time to get this presentation underway. First of all, I would again like to thank everyone for registering and for attending this particular webinar. We're very excited to introduce ANFF-C to you all. And to get us going, I'm going to start with a few slides just from myself to remind you of what ANFF is and how ANFF-C has come about. I'm going to firstly acknowledge the Yugara and Turrbal people, the traditional owners of the lands on which I come to you from today. On behalf of ANFF, I pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connection to country. We recognise their valuable contributions to Australia and the global society. I'm going to share my screen now so that we can see some of the slides that I've prepared for this presentation. And as always, in a webinar situation, we're going to use the Q&A function for any questions that pop up. So I would ask you to ask your questions in there. We have plenty of time at the end of the presentations to have some discussion and to really answer any of those questions that you might have about where ANFF and ANFF-C are looking to use this particular platform and how it's going to work. So I would encourage you to drop in the questions as they come to you. Sorry, there we go, back to the front slide. Thank you. So as many of you know, ANFF is the Australian National Fabrication Facility, and I am Jane Fitzpatrick, the CEO of the organisation. We were established in 2007 under the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Strategy. That's a lot of words to basically say that Australia really wanted to be strategic in how they invested in national research infrastructure, and really as an entire country come together to provide the best for both research and industry in the higher end infrastructure that we needed to really promote world-class research and new innovations and industries in Australia. Our particular flavour for our NRI is providing micro and nano fabrication capabilities. So we're really about making things at really small scale. We do this at a number of different organizations. And as you can see there, we have 21 organizations involved with ANFF, 20 universities and CSIRO. We are a truly national network. And when we say we're trying to hit everywhere in the country, we really have a very broad coverage of the main areas. Unfortunately, we don't have anywhere in Tasmania or Northern Territories at this moment in time, but we really do look to supply our facilities and our talents to those areas through the interaction with the researchers that are there. You can see that we have numerous nodes depending on where you are, and of course all of these nodes have a particular speciality. Our specialities range from optical fibers all the way through to medical devices, communication technologies, and also incredible mirrors that are going to be used for things like gravitational wave detection. So really we have the ability to make just about anything that needs to be made, but we really need to know what you need and how we're going to fabricate that at our sites. Our experts are there, and we have now got our 3 client engagement facilitators who are on the ground and are there to help you navigate the access to all of this expertise. 130 experts and 500 tools is a lot to get your head around. So those client engagement facilitators are there to try and shortcut the process for you getting on board with ANFF. And in talking about those capabilities, this is a really busy slide that tries to give you an idea of the breadth of capabilities that are in ANFF. There's more than 500 individual capabilities, so that's tools or capabilities that you can access, and about 130 expert staff that support all of those tools. The key is that we don't bring you in, let you loose on a tool after 10 minutes of training, and then you can have to find your way. We really do help you get in, get onto that tool, figure out how to use that tool to get what you want done, and therefore shortcut your process so that you don't have to spend as much time learning the tool as you do actually using its products. ANFF also provides access to those capabilities in a number of different ways. We can train you to use the tools, and we can then support you to get what you need done. Direct access to the tools and processes. We can also do the feed for service. If you tell us what you want to do, we can help you to do that. And we can also look at your projects and actually give you advice and consultancy on how to do it in a way that is most appropriate to what you're trying to do. Very briefly, some of our latest numbers from last year, as this year has still got a couple of days to run, so we haven't got our facts and figures for the financial year 2022 just yet. They are looking to be better, slightly better than these ones, which I think is a testament to how busy and how important ANFF is in the Australian context at the moment. But you can see that we have 786 publications that actually mention ANFF. So these are not just ones that we know that we did. These are ones that have actually acknowledged us and actually written us into the paper. And over 58,000 items that have been manufactured and supplied to clients around the country and around the world. Our casebook, as you see there, the front page of our casebook has a really great broad delve into some of what our clients' projects and the solutions that we provide to our clients. So I would encourage anyone to drop onto our website and have a look at through the last couple of casebooks if you want to get a really good idea of how ANFF supports innovation and research across Australia. So with ANFF, what have we been doing in the last 15 years? Well, really, we've been looking at the TRL levels, that's technology readiness levels, that really run from about 1 up to maybe 4 or 5 into 6 sometimes. And we really realized that we could do a little bit more. There are projects out there that can still be using our facilities and our capabilities all the way up to maybe TRL 8s and possibly into 9s. But we really wanted to find out what we could do to help those projects move along this particular scale. So we're expanding what we can offer. These are making sure that some of our capabilities have industry relevance, so that they are at a scale that will provide low-level manufacturing or that are easily translatable into manufacturing facilities, and also now out-of-lab services that will support the growth of the projects or the IP that's being developed on ANFF tools and moving it across into the real world. So that's why we've decided to start ANFF-C. And now I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, Dr. John Morrison, who is going to bring you through how this platform has been developed and how this platform applies to the IP that's being generated right now. So over to you, John.
Well, hello and welcome. I'll just get my share screen thing happening. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. I'd also like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which each of us meet today. I respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. I acknowledge the ongoing connection that Aboriginal people have to this land and recognise Aboriginal people as the original custodians of this land. I'm John Morrison, I'm the Director of ANFF-C. And the whole purpose of today is just to give you an overview of the platform and how we intend to use it and how you can best access it. So the whole idea behind ANFF-C is to support the launch of new businesses and hopefully create lots of new high-tech jobs and obviously dependent on the technology that's been developed using our platforms, with the expectation of attracting capital from professional investors. So one of the key implications there is that we want to see what's after our investment. We want to see that you're going to actually continue to develop and commercialize your IP and have a successful outcome. So the key purpose of the ANFF-C investment strategy is to actually decrease risk or uncertainty associated with investing in early stage entities. So we're effectively a pre-seed fund, and we're trying to help take away some of the risk that a traditional investor would look at, the opportunity and say, oh, it's just too risky, it's too early, I don't understand how this is going to work. And I'll explain how we can do that for you. So how do we invest? We'll look at anything after proof of concept. So you've got an early stage prototype, and you've demonstrated that it does what you think it can do. Obviously, it's still got a long way to go before it's a commercial product. We recognise that, but we'll look at it at that very early stage, which is earlier than most investors will touch these opportunities. What we do is bring subject matter experts in around your opportunity, and try and build a framework that becomes investable for professional investors. One thing I should stress right at the outset is we don't hand over cash. So we agree to certain services that may be provided, or studies or whatever. It could be a proof of concept study that you need to get an outside service provider to do for you. And we pay that external service provider to do the work. In some cases, the work is actually done internally by the team, but often we don't charge you for that, obviously. But yeah, their money is used for external service providers. Just to stress where we sit in the whole value chain, investment value chain, we're coming in, as I indicated, at the proof of concept stage, so very early. Earlier than you'd see for an angel investor or traditional venture capital. And one of the things I'd like to highlight is we're effectively part of a landscape that the successive federal governments are trying to create to help manufacturing opportunities actually get past just something that is a research opportunity and sits on a shelf. So one of the recent announcements that was actually done by the previous government, but the current government is continuing to support, is the Australian Economic Accelerator, which I think is a fantastic model because they will come in at the MVP stage, and they'll put up to $500,000 on the table. And then there's a second stage, which is the proof of scale stage, which is up to $5 million. The $500,000 doesn't require matching funding, the $5 million does. We'll put up to 120K on the table. And a key feature of our investment is it's non-diluting. We do not take equity. We do not expect royalties. We actually give you the money under agreed terms. So what are the eligibility criteria? There's a couple of things that we're looking for. Obviously, ANFF should be playing a critical role in the development of your technology or your product. The support becomes available once you've got a prototype and demonstrates proof of principle outcomes for your proposed technology platform. There's an expectation that you don't have alternate funding sources already available. So, we're trying to help those early stage entities that are struggling to actually get to an investable. We want to make you investment ready, and we're trying to support entities that are struggling to do that. One of the key things we look for is that the commercial rights of the technology is clearly controlled by you or your spin out, and that the whole concept is that we decrease risk for your commercial strategy and hopefully increase the value of your company. What's specifically excluded from funding is if you've got Series A funding lined up, well, we can no longer invest in you. You're now beyond where we can we actively support you, and you shouldn't really need the small amounts of money that we're actually offering. We can't give you credit or pay for you to have access to the technology platforms. That's actually in our agreement with the federal government, our funding agreement. So it's specific, that funding agreement specifically excludes that. And the other area we don't support is patent costs. Now, I should stress that while we don't pay for patent costs, we will look at landscape reviews and other things that actually support your IP strategy. We just won't pay for the cost of the patents. So what sort of services do we provide? Look, it's a complete suite, and this is not exhaustive, and I'm not going to go through everything here, but we start at the very early stage of trying to help develop you and understand what's required for a successful commercial venture. We'll connect you with entrepreneurs and mentors and company introductions and investors. We'll help you to validate some of your early stage stuff. So that might require market research, competitive searches, maybe some prototype testing. We'll support legal frameworks in place for you. We've got a great connection with a top tier law firm that will help put, things like shareholder agreements and things in place. And we'll also help promote, so trade shows, potentially social media, investment events, etc. As I want to stress again that this is not an exhaustive list. So our process, and I'm going to take a bit of time on this. So basically, we want to get your opportunities as early as possible. I would like the first day a PhD student walks in to an ANFF facility that they are told about the ANFF-C platform, and they give me a call or come and see me. Perhaps we do a Zoom call. And they go into my database of potential projects. And look, some of these projects, we've just funded one project that's been working with ANFF for 10 years before they're now, ready to actually engage with the ANFF-C platform. So it's taken them 10 years to prototype their device. So, there's no timelines involved. But the earlier the better, because that gives us the ability to start putting, frameworks around that actually support your idea and help you devise something that's commercially viable. So we have two gates associated with ANFF-C. The first gate's a 20K gate, and the second K is 100K. You do not have to go through gate 1. You can go directly to gate 2. But in most cases, I would advise people to go through gate 1. To be eligible for gate 1, it's actually a fairly straightforward sort of 2 or 3 page document, most of which I will fill out. And the main point of that is to clarify the ownership of the IP. Who owns the IP, that there's not overhanging agreements with external third parties that are going to complicate things, and that whoever it is willing to work with ANFF-C to achieve agreed outcomes. The outcome of that process is an MOU with ANFF and whoever the party is. So it could be a university, or it could be an early stage entity, a small company. Once that's approved, there would be some agreed processes that would be done. For instance, what is frequently done is market research. So we help to validate some of the assumptions you have about who wants to buy your potential product, and that it's actually going to solve a problem for them. And we're quite happy to pay for some market research. Again, it's open as to what you choose to do, but we work with you to agree is what's going to be the most benefit. So you've progressed through that, and you've maybe continued to develop your prototype, and now you think you're ready for stage 2 or gate 2, and that is a little bit more detailed process. It's basically a mini business case. We want to understand things like path to market, manufacturing, can you do this at scale, what the sort of costs, what sort of price points you imagine you might be able to sell it for, what do you think you're going to have to cost to actually make it. you know, we go through the whole gamut. We also have a really good look at the potential risks associated with your product and your path to market. That process is then presented to our review panel. We've got a commercial review panel, which will make a recommendation as to whether or not to be funded. And then once the review is then presented to our board and the board signs off on it. So that will then give you access to up to 100K. What I should stress is we like to see coherent themes that we invest in, not just a shopping list of, oh, these are the 10 things that, you know, I can't currently buy or afford or whatever. We want to see a strategic investment. Again, it's about reducing risk. So in the case of stage 2 funding, often it's things like a manufacturing plan or a regulatory strategy or an ISO strategy. So, because that's the sort of thing that a investor will want to see. They want to understand that, you know, you can manufacture at scale. They want to understand that you have a path to market, that you've got a regulatory strategy in place, that, you know, there's no major hiccups along the way there. That will then open up stage 3. And, you know, as I said, that's usually paying for external consultants. And then hopefully you're going to launch or potentially go on to another funding round with something like the Australian Economic Accelerator. If you think about this as a funnel, what I'm hoping to have at the top of the funnel is about 300 projects. I'm expecting that somewhere between 20 and 30 projects would be funded at gate 1. And about somewhere between 5 and 10 would be funded at gate 2. So the 300, you know, some of those will be there for 10 years, and that's absolutely fine. But the success rate is actually quite high for each of the gates. And that's what we want. We don't want this to be impossible to get. We don't see it as a competitive process. What we want to do is be able to fund good projects. So hopefully you're encouraged by that. It's not like a grant. Additional considerations. Look, we're looking to create new entities, new companies. So if you're in a licensing opportunity, I'm not saying we won't help, but it's probably not a good opportunity, a good example for being able to win funding. We are helping some cases at the moment that we see as more likely to be licensing opportunities, but it's not with money. It's with our support and our connections. I like to think that we can see who's going to be a CEO, or at least understand what a CEO would look like. If you're a team of engineers, you know, there's 4 engineers, you've got a very homogeneous team. And you may have very deep skills in the technology, but you don't have a lot of experience on the commercial side. So we need to fill in those gaps for you and help actually pull a team together, because that's also what professional investors are looking for. We do need market validation, and as I've said, it's often what is funded with gate 1. We need to understand your market. And we also need to understand your path to market. So what are the key hurdles you're going to have to address to actually get your product into the marketplace? And I'm going to end there. They're my contact details. I'd like to say that the whole team actually supports, the whole ANFF-HQ team supports this, and especially acknowledge Matt Chong in Adelaide, who directly supports the ANFF-C activities. And we're opening up for questions.
Thank you very much, John. And as you can see, what we're trying to do is give you a really great flavour and a feel for what ANFF-C does. But it really does come back to each and individual project as to what ANFF-C can help them with, and because where they are in their commercialization path, and also what is their particular barriers is what, you know, we're trying to find through ANFF-C, and then also work towards lowering those barriers and making it cleaner. So As always, please drop your questions into the Q&A function. And I would love I will actually ask Anthony, I will let you open up your mic, Anthony, and I will ask you to ask your question.
Hello?
Yes, there you are, Anthony. Sorry, Antonio, sorry.
Anthony is fine, thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity and also for the presentation, quite succinct, to the point, and very clear. The question that I have is, what are the unique manufacturing capabilities at the ANFF that would allow us to differentiate from our closest competitor, for example, here in the APAC region, Singapore specifically, that would allow us to attract opportunities internationally to Australia? Thank you.
Jane, do you want to address that one?
I'm happy to. So ANFF really has been built across a concept of research tooling that is industry relevant. So what we've got in Australia is not necessarily unique capabilities, but certainly a unique capability and expertise mix, in that we can take projects from where they are at the very early inception phase and bring them through to a point at which they have an idea that is manufacturable. So not necessarily made in the most beautifully bespoke research way, but hopefully in a way that could be scaled, may not be scaled with us, but could be scaled. So I think that's one of the unique capabilities of what the ANFF has built over the last 15 years. So I think tie that into the deep understanding of what ANFF has in regards to deep tech and its translation, because you have to be able to make these things. And then adding in the how to find the right market, find the right way to market, find funds that actually will support that development process, I think is what this whole group is trying to do. We may not be the most unique in the world in some of our manufacturing tools, but I think the coincidence of both the tools, the expertise, the theory behind making sure that our research tools are industry relevant, and then of course the ANFF-C trying to push those projects along the pathway, I think is a little bit more relevant than some of our competitors internationally.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I've got another question here, which again I'll just answer very quickly. Do companies have to have previously worked with ANFF to be eligible? My apologies that there were some issues with the login, and some of the last link that went out was an Eventbrite link, and it wasn't the link to the actual webinar. So our apologies there. A lesson has been learned. So, but with this, yes, you do have to have used ANFF facilities. There's many ways to commercialize technology, and if we don't bring something to the table in this pathway, then it's not really for us. John, would you like to say anything more to that?
Yeah, look, well, there's got to be a clear relationship with ANFF. We don't necessarily have to know the nature of your technology. We don't, you may be very secretive about what you're actually doing, but there needs to be a clear and unequivocal relationship between what you've produced and the ANFF technology platforms. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And next question. They've said that it's a very clear program and seems to be well thought through, and we appreciate that. It did take us a long time to get to where we are with it. What does ANFF receive from investing in these companies? John?
Look, what we're trying to do is change the culture. And so, yes, the outcome is about decreasing risk for these early stage projects. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is change the way research is done in Australia and build a stronger economy. It will be the outcome of that. So we want researchers to come in with their research ideas, but to be thinking, well, what can this be a product? Could this actually have applications in the real world? And just to start asking those questions is a big shift for some researchers. Not so much for companies. Why we support companies? Because they need as much support as they can, and quite frankly, the pre-seed space, it's very hard to get money. So it's usually coming from friends, family, and fools. And we're trying to just fill that gap a little bit, but actually add some expertise, layer some expertise on top of it as well. So it's not blindly giving money. And one of the reasons why we don't take any benefit from giving the money is because how do you value something that's that early? I mean, is it worth 100 grand? Is it worth 200 grand? We're giving you 100 grand. Do we get 50% of the company? It's crazy. So there's no real way to take a financial position in these really early stage entities. Hence, the money is given at this stage is given freely. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to support that, we're given money by the federal government to support our efforts, and under the NCRIS principles. The NCRIS principles do support capturing the benefit of the research that goes through our hands. And this is why, we're proposing this as a model. Now, 10 years from now, this model might evolve and be different, but right now we don't see a sensible way of taking equity in projects that may not even have been spun out of a company yet. So it's a really difficult question to answer. So the easiest way to approach it was to not bother right now. So I think that hopefully that helps everybody. I've got a couple of more questions here that I will throw out. Is the dispersed node nature of ANFF a hurdle for development? It seems like developing a product when you're working across multiple sites could be difficult. John, do you want to take that, or shall I?
You go for that one.
Thanks, John. I think one of the things that I would like to stress about the way our node system works is that, yes, we have a distributed and dispersed node system, but the idea that we have put in process trains in each of those places. So what we're trying to do is look at an application area and actually put all the tooling required from very start to the very end of that complete process in each of our facilities. So depending on the facility, it will have different process trains available. And what we try and do is match every project with a process train, and therefore with the appropriate node. Some nodes, obviously, or some projects will need to move between different nodes. But we try and manage that through a simple process through a single node. So your project would come to a node. The vast majority of it will be done there. Anything that needs to be done on another node will be subcontracted between the nodes. So it doesn't really matter to you where it gets done. It's all happened at, on your one interaction with a node. And we're trying to smooth that as much as possible, because we do understand that we can't have absolutely everything in every node. So therefore, there are specialities that will not be available everywhere, but we try and smooth that pathway. And as I mentioned, the client engagement facilitators are trying to help with that. We have 8 really great facility managers across the country who understand how to work with industry and understand how to get projects done. So with those in place, it is a little bit easier than you going and knocking on every door for every step. We're trying to do that for you.
Yeah, and I'll just add that as Jane mentioned at the beginning, we can do fee-for-service work, which is actually incredibly cost competitive. So if you're located in one area and using some of one node, but you need access to another node, you can still get access through a fee-for-service mechanism, or obviously you can travel there as well. So whatever works, but I do stress the fee-for-service is actually very attractive.
I see that Canary also has a question. So Canary, if I can ask you to ask your question live, please. You just have to.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah, no, thanks, John and Jane. That was really fantastic insight of ANFF-C. I was curious about, John, you mentioned that there will be a review panel. So are there any guidelines that has been developed that can be easily available for potential candidates to review, and so that they can apply for projects and match the matrix according to the guidelines by the review panel?
I'll say this, we basically have a template for both Gate 1 and Gate 2 that's been signed off by our board. The template isn't available. At the moment, I'm treating it as a confidential document, but it's very straightforward, and we do share it with you if we feel that you're eligible for one or more of the gates. It's not, but to try and reverse engineer a project to fit the template, I think would be a mistake. The templates by design are fairly generic, but they're asking critical commercial questions. There's nothing in there that would be a surprise to anyone that was trying to develop a commercial product. And certainly if you even have something that's remotely looks like, we would be interested, and we're not being difficult. We haven't turned anyone away yet. We would obviously share the template with you. What I tend to do is try and fill out as much of the template as possible myself, and before handing it over to whoever is applying, to just to minimize the amount of work that they have to do. But also it's meant to be a light touch. It's not meant to be a very deep dig into the commercial opportunity. It's really just meant to demonstrate that you have an understanding of all the issues that you're having to deal with. Anyway, so I hope that answers your question.
Yep. No, thanks for that, John.
And I'll just follow on. This is not a grant. It is not a competitive grant process. We're not looking, we're not comparing 10 different versions or 10 different answers to the same question, seeing which one we like the best. This is about facts and figures. Do you have a patent position? How long is left on those patent positions? Do you understand what your path to market is? Have you got a regulatory strategy? It's very simple and clear, and facts and figures. And if you hit all of those and you know what your barrier is, it's more that, yes, okay, this fits, let's fund it. It's really not a competitive process where we're looking for grantmanship on these kinds of forms. So it's a slightly different process.
Thanks, and I'll just add one more comment. You don't have to hit all of the boxes, by the way. We don't expect anyone to actually have solved all of the problems. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't need us. So there will be gaps, and that's maybe what you will ask for funding for. You might need a regulatory strategy. So that's absolutely fine. Great.
So somebody, Yun Lee has actually come up with a question on what are the terms and conditions the funding receivers will need to follow? John.
So look, there's an MOU, which is basically an agreement to work together to achieve agreed goals. And then there's a term sheet, which is also basically says what we're going to do and what you're going to do. It's very straightforward, very light touch. There's no, we minimize legal requirements, we minimize indemnity and warranty clauses. We have agreed outcomes that we're willing to pay for, and we pay for them. You get the outcomes, you get the results. We do not want to control you. We do not want to tell you what to do. We do have the right to say no, but it's usually we find where the common ground is, and we work together to achieve something that's bigger and better than what you started with.
I hope that answers that one. Next one, they're coming in thick and fast, John. So this is great, and we really do appreciate all the questions that people are asking, because it's one thing to present a new platform like this, but it really is in the nitty gritty that people actually want to know, where is this applicable to me? So I really do appreciate all those questions that are dropping in. The next one is the grant a cash grant or a voucher to use up to 20 or 100K worth of AMP facilities?
Definitely not. So we cannot give you access to our facilities through this granting program. As I mentioned during the presentation, we're specifically excluded from giving people either credits or cash or whatever to actually access our platforms. In some cases, I'd actually like to, but we're very clearly, specifically excluded from being able to do that.
Okay. Can some of the funding be used to fund grant writers to help apply for further larger grants?
Look, in theory, yes, but it would have to be what I would call a commercial grant. So, for instance, if you were to be applying for an MRFF or something, I could see that we could support that. If you're applying for a traditional academic grant, I would say you're not ready for the program. So, but there are Commercialisation Australia, if they still exist. There's commercial grants out there that support these things. The Australian Economic Accelerator, you may want to bring in some professional writers around that. I don't see any reason why we couldn't support that.
Okay, so I have two attendees who've raised their hands. So I'm going to start with David R. I've just unmuted your mic. Can you please ask your question?
He's still muted.
Hello?
There you are, David.
Hello. There's our recent ARC scheme technology fellowship. What are your views on supporting people to use that for their time allocation to put towards projects in ANFF-C?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the terms of the grant. Again, we're meant to be past research. So I realise that this is a translational sort of grant, but you'd have to be, past prototype and looking to support a commercial, moving towards commercial outcomes with commercial goals. So I'm not saying no, but I'd have to just see the actual terms of that grant and how it would be used. We're not here to support, what is effectively research. We're meant to be on the development side of the R&D equation. And
plus, we don't require any co-funding or time commitments or whatever from the people who are on this, who are getting our funds. We're just identifying an issue that they need to be solved, and we're going to help them solve that.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, thanks, David. And Mohammed, I'm just going to Mohammed, would you like to ask your question?
He's still muted.
He is. He has to unmute his own microphone. Maybe that hand is not a real hand. Okay. So what can the cash grant be spent on? I think you're going to get a couple of these, John. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so look, the goal is to de-risk your project and make it more attractive to professional investors. So look, these slides will be available. I assume we'll send all the slides to all of the attendees or everyone that registered. So you'll be able to go back and see, there is a list there of a fairly detailed list of the sorts of things we'll support. It's not exhaustive. Already people have raised, some things that weren't on that list. But it's everything from market research to legal support to regulatory to manufacturing support, manufacturing strategies, and as we've talked about today, potentially grant writing, small clinical trials. We're looking at potentially supporting some clinical trials at the moment. So as long as it fits within our budget, and by the way, you're allowed to leverage it. But it's got to actually pay for an outcome, not a partial outcome. So if the total budget is for your study or your work is 200 grand, and you've got 100 grand from a university or you've got some other matching money, that's absolutely fine. But it's got to actually solve a problem. You can't get partial money and try and find more money somewhere else. We need to know where the rest of the money is coming from.
Is the requirement that the application is affiliated with an academic institution, a PhD student or staff, or the applicant can be an individual, someone who has an MVP?
Yeah, we're totally open. We are agnostic as to where the intellectual property is coming from. As long as it's your intellectual property or you have the rights to commercialize it, we are there to help you. Obviously, assuming that at least some of the intellectual property has been generated using an ANFF technology platform.
Yes, and I will reiterate that you can't come to us with a brand new idea if you're absolutely new to the ANFF. You really have to have, for us to have value in your development process or in your pathway, we really need to have some input into how this product is going forward. And if we can't bring any expertise to the table, there are plenty of other people that you can go to that will help you in this space. But our unique offering is that fact that we know fabrication, we know how to manufacture. So that has to be part of the value that we bring to this. Otherwise, it's not as valuable to the person who's coming through the door. Someone is assuming that ANFF-C's funding is federal. It cannot be used to leverage further federal government grants as matching funding. It depends on the system and the granting program. I think, John, do you have any further comment on that?
Yeah, I think if you're applying for a grant and you're claiming you're getting a federal grant and you're claiming you're going to use our money to leverage, as the matching money, for example, for the federal grant, that would probably be a problem. If you've received funding in the past from a federal grant, and that funding is, as long as it's what we're doing is separate and different to what you've received the funding for, I think it's okay. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but I think it's okay.
Okay, somebody was talking about leveraging of a CRCP. And I think that's probably one of those cases where we just have to look at it, but I think it would probably be all right. No, that's a no? Because
I don't think you can use us to leverage a CRCP. Look, we probably need to get advice on this, but I think that would be excluded.
Okay.
Because again, it's federal plus federal.
I suppose my thinking was that if there was a company who was doing a CRCP, that the company's part of that funding could be leveraged.
Yeah,
it would depend. But again, we don't require it. So if the company came to us and they fit all of our criteria, and we would just give the company the money, they don't need to leverage it. But you would not be able to use our money to leverage from further funds from the CRC.
Yeah, I
think that's the way to think about it. That if you're trying to use our money to leverage something else, it's probably not a good idea to be looking at other federal funds. Okay. All right. Why do you focus on reducing risk? Why do we not allow them to decide how to use money and just give them the cash?
Yeah. Look, our goal is to create new companies and to help new companies be successful in raising the money they need from professional investors to actually become commercial outcomes. We rightly or wrongly have a process of, we focus on reducing risk because we believe that most professional investors, that's one of the key killing issues for them. If they see too much risk, too many unknowns, they'll just say it's too early. So that's where we focus. If from the language that is inherent in that question, it suggests almost that it's a research problem rather than a commercial problem. And we're focused on the commercial pathway. Now, we can argue about where the best place to reduce risk is, and that's absolutely fine. we'll come to the table on that. But we just need to understand that we should be actually increasing the value of your company by reducing the risk associated with the early stage nature of the company.
Great. Thanks, John. Okay, it looks like we have answered everybody's questions to the best of our abilities at this moment in time. So once more, I'd like to thank John and the team who've put this webinar together and make sure that it's been running really smoothly. Thank you to all of the attendees who have come today. I will, the entire presentation has been recorded and will be put up on our YouTube channel, and that link will be sent out to you. In addition, we will provide the slides and the ANFF-C prospectus, which is a digital version of most of the information that you've seen today, and that you can share that as widely as you'd like. And that will also be coming to your inboxes very, very soon. So if there's no more questions, I'd like to once again thank you everybody for coming today. Please feel free to spread the word about ANFF-C, and any of your colleagues who have used ANFF, come and have a conversation with John. You might not know exactly how we can help, but if we have the conversation, maybe we can help figure out how ANFF-C can help. So with that, I'll close it all down and give everybody back 5 minutes in their day. So take care.
Thanks, everyone.